Why I hate Jacob Zuma and don't even care that he got expelled. I remember the moment I decided that this man was a no-go for me and that I hated him. It was around 2009. He was coming into extreme prominence back then. He was probably the most famous and popular person in this country. He was making waves all over the world because he was about to become president. He had fought a hard race against Thabo Mbeki. Well, Thabo Mbeki wasn't running for president but was trying to get him out from running. He had been fired some time before as deputy president and had made a huge comeback to actually take the reins of the ANC, and now was looking to take the reins of the country. He had been accused of rape and arms deal and all sorts of things, and he had fought off all of it to now be in a prominent position to become president, and he became president that year. And he had his detractors, but he had his super fans. And he was running around singing Mshiniwam, Mshiniwam, and he was undeniably the most popular politician in this country and in Africa at that time, and probably the world, because the fervor around him was so big. If you think this MK win was big, back then, if you don't remember or you weren't there, he was big. And he became president, and we went into a dip that our country is still in to this day. And it's only gotten worse since he left the presidency. But when I knew that this guy wasn't for me, wasn't all that, because there was a glimmer of hope when he came in as president, if you remember, that perhaps it's time to give this guy another chance. Even Zapiro had a cartoon. After all the cartoons accusing him of rape, alluding to his corruption and his rape and his rape case and all of this, even Zapiro said, well, perhaps this is a new start. Very typical, let's turn a new leaf sort of South African behavior. But when I knew this guy wasn't for me, is on his birthday in that year, after all that he had been through and our country was going through the most, do you think this started recently, all the things that are happening? Even in 2009, our country was looking in bad shape. We needed someone to come in and inject some real direction, some real leadership. And things were looking down. On his birthday, one of the journalists asked him, so what is your hope, or what are you thinking for your birthday? Something like this. I can't remember the exact phrasing because it's a while back now. They asked him something like this, and his biggest response, he could have said anything. He could have said, I want good education for our children. I want to clean up the country and get us on a good direction because we have so much that we can do. We're such a great people. We're such a great country. The economy could boom, to lower crime, to protect people, to protect children. Even back then, they were still in extreme danger, just like they are today. It's only gotten worse. He could have said any of these things. Create more jobs. It was still a problem back then. It's only gotten worse. Well, what he said was something like this. As I turn a year older, I realized that all these people that stayed up nights trying to get me, trying to put me down, look at them now. Where are they? All he could talk about on his birthday, instead of being a statesman and pulling the country together with his words, because his words meant something back then, pulling to the country together with his words and actually casting a vision forward for South Africa and inspiring people who were already wanting to be on his side, because everyone was sort of like, well, let's give this guy another chance. Let's see if he can come in and do something. Instead of doing that, pulling the country together with his words and then getting to the grindstone and working, saying something inspiring about the economy, creating jobs, dealing with crime, something like that, taking care of the children, educating people. All he did was talk about his enemies and himself and prop himself up and how much he had been through and how much he had overcome. That's when I knew this guy and the ANC are one and the same. He's no different. They deserve each other. I don't like this guy. As a matter of fact, I despise this inbred, selfish, self-consumed, self-important ANC stooge. Him and the ANC deserve each other. Expelled. Who gives a rip? Just in case you're unsure, let me give you 5 reasons why I despise Jacob Zuma, I hate him, and I don't even care that he got expelled. The first reason, state capture. State capture refers to the widespread corruption and influence of private interests over state affairs in South Africa. The scandal primarily occurred during the Jacob Zuma presidency from 2009 to 2018. The Gupta family, particularly brothers Ajay, Atul, and Rajesh, were at the center of the scandal. The Guptas immigrated in South Africa from India in the 90s. They developed close ties with Jacob Zuma and his family. The scandal involved the systematic looting of state resources and manipulation of government policy. It's estimated that hundreds of billions of rands were lost due to state capture. The term state capture was popularized in South Africa by former public protector Thuli Madonsela, a woman with many hairstyles. Madonsela's 2016 state capture report was a crucial document in exposing the scandal. The report led to the establishment of the Judicial Commission of Inquiry into allegations of state capture, known as the Zondo Commission. Remember that? 1 billion rand waste of time that no one has done nothing about, is doing nothing about substantially yet. The commission was chaired by Deputy Chief Justice Raymond Zondo. Began its work in August 2018 already and concluded only in June 2022, 1 billion rand later. More state capture money gone down the drain, if you ask me. Because to deal with state capture, you didn't need a whole commission. You could have just dealt with a dysfunctional, corrupt government as president. But he didn't want to because he was allowing it. The commission heard testimony from hundreds of witnesses over nearly 4 years, actually. Key state-owned enterprises, or SOEs, that were affected include Eskom, Transnet, and of course South African Airways, which has now been sold for pennies by Pravin Gordhan, another phony. Scandal contributed to South Africa's economic decline and credit rating downgrades. Look at us now. It led to widespread public outrage and protests calling for Zuma's resignation. Remember those Zuma must fall protests, singing white ladies and all that? Even they were fed up. Jacob Zuma was eventually forced to resign as president in February of 2018. He of course didn't want to go. Cyril Ramaphosa succeeded Zuma as president, promising to combat corruption. Yeah, how did that go? The scandal deeply divided the ruling ANC. Many high-ranking government officials and business leaders were implicated. The Guptas fled South Africa in 2018 and are believed to be in Dubai or somewhere around there. Even India, they bounce around a lot and we still haven't gotten them back. South Africa has sought to extradite the brothers for a long time so that they can come face these charges. Hopefully they will, but I'm not hopeful that they will. Obviously, the scandal exposed weaknesses in South Africa's institutional safeguards against corruption. In other words, we were just a corrupt state. The hashtag Gupta leaks, a catch of leaked emails, provided substantial evidence of state capture. I don't know if you've ever read those or if you remember those. The scandal has had long-lasting effects to the South African economy and to public trust, has broken down the government and the SOEs. The final Zondo Commission report was released in multiple parts, with the last part submitted in June of 2022. The report recommended criminal investigations into numerous individuals. It also called for changes to South Africa's electoral system to enhance accountability. The scandal has become a case study in how democracy can be undermined through systematic corruption. It revealed the extent of cadre deployment, the practice of appointing party loyalists to key positions. The state capture era saw a significant brain drain from state institutions and SOEs. Whistleblowers were killed, people immigrated, and the country fell into disarray. The recovery of stolen assets and prosecution of those involved remains an ongoing challenge in South Africa, if you want to put it like that. It's basically non-existent and not moving. It's selective when it does happen, and it happens usually at a low level or to low-level people. This is the actual collapse of the South African government and of South Africa, and all of this happened under Jacob Zuma. And that's the first reason I despise this man. He systematically broke down this country, hollowed it out, and turned it into a corrupt system that is now so difficult to turn around. Many people will tell you, well, he didn't steal money, there's no evidence really against him. That's not exactly true, but even if you believe that, what he did was, to stay in power, he allowed everyone around him to steal and destroy, and to do exactly what they wanted, to have big government contracts, to do business and hollow out the state. And he allowed that so that he could stay in power and everyone could stay aligned to him. He did it on purpose. He hollowed out the country. It is his fault. It happened under his supervision and with his full permission. The second reason I hate Jacob Zuma and don't care that he got expelled is the Nkandla lies. Nkandla refers to President Jacob Zuma's private homestead in KwaZulu-Natal. The scandal involved the use of private funds for upgrades to Zuma's private residence. The upgrades began in 2009 and costs escalated dramatically over time. Initially estimated at about 65 million rand, the final cost ballooned to over 246 million. And you want to tell me this guy didn't steal money himself? The project included controversial additions such as a swimming pool, amphitheater and cattle kraal. And if you see visuals of Nkandla, it actually looks kind of bad. It looks kind of run down and not well taken care of. These additions were justified as security upgrades by the government of the time. The swimming pool was infamously described as the fire pool for emergency firefighting purposes. Then Public Protector Thuli Madonsela, a woman of many hairstyles, investigated the upgrades. Madonsela's report titled Secure and Comfort was released in March 2014. The report found that Zuma had unduly benefited from upgrades. That's just a fancy way of saying this man is dirty as sin. It recommended that Zuma repay a portion of the cost for non-security upgrades. The scandal became a major political issue at the time. Opposition parties, particularly the Democratic Alliance and the filthy economic freedom fighters, used it to attack Zuma's credibility. The phrase "pay back the money," if you remember that hit rap song, became a rallying cry in Parliament for some. Zuma initially refused to comply with the Public Protector's recommendations. The matter was taken to the Constitutional Court. In March of 2016, the Constitutional Court ruled that Zuma had violated the Constitution. The court ordered Zuma to repay portion of the money spent on non-security upgrades. The National Treasury determined that Zuma would repay 7.8 million. Zuma eventually paid the amount, reportedly through a loan from, of course, VBS Mutual Bank. The scandal obviously damaged Zuma's reputation, as if it wasn't bad already, and that of the ANC. The Nkandla scandal contributed to the ANC's declining electoral performance, which is ironic if you think in the future Zuma himself would take down the ANC with his newly minted MK party. It was a factor in Zuma's eventual resignation as well as president in February of 2018. The scandal highlighted the role of South Africa's Chapter 9 institutions, particularly the Public Protector. That's why she became so popular and so beloved, actually, because of this report and because of this case. The whole affair raised questions about the ethical standards of South African political leadership, obviously. It led to an increased scrutiny of government spending on presidential security benefits, and that was already a talking point. It just made it worse. Scandal was extensively covered by South African and international media. It inspired numerous political cartoons and satires in South African popular culture. The Nkandla homestead became a contentious site, with opposition parties attempting to visit. I don't know if you remember that. The scandal contributed to divisions within the ANC, with some members calling for Zuma's resignation. It sparked debates about the intersection of traditional leadership and more modern governance in South Africa. We're still having that argument, and guess who's heading it up? Jacob Zuma. The affair had implications for South Africa's international reputation and investor confidence. The Nkandla scandal remains a significant reference point in discussions about corruption in post-apartheid South Africa. And if you remember, just before the election, when MK Party was running around starting to look like it was a serious party and gathering a lot of support, Fikile Mbalula came out and exclaimed how the ANC had covered for Jacob Zuma with the Nkandla thing, even referencing the fire pool. He admitted that the whole thing was a farce to protect Jacob Zuma. the whole fire pool, the whole security upgrades. In other words, Jacob Zuma got away with stealing all that money, spending it on himself and his filthy little homestead, and then used VBS money, probably gotten from a friend, to pay the whole thing back. Unbelievable. I hate that man. The third reason I hate Jacob Zuma and don't care that he got expelled is the Schabir Shaik matter. Schabir Shaik was a South African businessman and financial advisor to Jacob Zuma. The scandal centered on corrupt relationship between Shaik and Zuma and the French arms company Thales. It was part of the larger South African arms deal scandal of the late 90s and early 2000s that Patricia de Lille unearthed. Now she works for the ANC. Ironic. Shaik was arrested in 2001 and charged with corruption and fraud. His trial began in October 2004 in the Durban High Court. The trial lasted 8 months and involved over 200 witnesses. Shaik was accused of making payments to Zuma in exchange for political influence. The payments to Zuma totaled over 1.2 million over a period of 7 years. Shaik was also accused of soliciting bribes from Thales for Zuma's benefit. The alleged bribe was for 500,000 per year in exchange for protection from investigation. On June 2, 2005, Shaik was found guilty on 2 counts of corruption and 1 of fraud. He was sentenced to 15 years in prison on June 8, 2005. The verdict implicated Jacob Zuma, then Deputy President of South Africa. As a result of the scandal, President Thabo Mbeki dismissed Zuma as Deputy President. The case laid the groundwork for future corruption charges against Zuma. Shaik's conviction was upheld by the Supreme Court of Appeal in November 2006. The Constitutional Court refused Shaik leave of appeal in October 2007. Shaik began serving his sentence in November 2006. And then, as if out of nowhere, he was controversially released on medical parole in March of 2009 after serving just over 2 years. His release on medical grounds was criticized and seen as politically motivated. The scandal highlighted the issue of tenderpreneurship in South Africa, which is using political connections for business gains. It exposed the close relationship between politicians and business people in post-apartheid South Africa. The case was a significant test of South Africa's criminal justice system. It demonstrated the ability of the judiciary to act independently against powerful political figures. The scandal had far-reaching effects on South Africa's politics, contributing to tensions within the ANC. It played a role in the political rivalry between Thabo Mbeki and Jacob Zuma. The case raised questions about the ethical standards of South Africa's new political elite, and we know those standards are non-existent. It became a symbol of corruption in post-apartheid government. The scandal received extensive media coverage again in both South Africa and internationally. The case highlighted the role of whistleblowers in exposing corruption. It contributed to public disillusionment with the ruling party, which was the ANC. The scandal had implications for South Africa's international reputation. It sparked debates about the effectiveness of South Africa's anti-corruption measures. The Shaik case remains a significant reference point in discussions about political corruption in South Africa, because to this day, Schabir Shaik is free and is not sick and is not dying. Jacob Zuma did that. He showed that if you were connected to the state and connected to him, you could do exactly what you wanted. And that's exactly what happened when he became president. People did exactly what they wanted and hollowed out the country. The Shaik matter showed that there was one form of justice for the normal citizen, and there was another form of justice for people who were connected to Zuma and to ANC politicians. That is a banana republic. The fourth reason I hate Jacob Zuma and don't care that he got expelled: the 2021 riots. The riots began on July 9th, 2029, primarily in KwaZulu-Natal. They were initially said to be triggered by the imprisonment of the former president Jacob Zuma, but that to me always seemed contrived, as if that was an excuse. Zuma had been sentenced to 15 months in prison for contempt of court. The unrest quickly spread to the Gauteng province, including Johannesburg. It was always kind of semi-sporadic. It was started by someone linked to him, if you ask me. And then it sort of spread to the rest of the communities, but it was sort of orchestrated. It seemed too convenient and too sudden. The riots lasted for about a week, ending around July 16, 2021. They were characterized by widespread looting, arson, and vandalism. Over 300 people died during the unrest. Thanks, Zuma. Thousands of businesses were looted or destroyed, and we saw the visuals because they were also under pressure from the COVID lockdowns, if you remember. Major highways, including the N3 between Durban and Johannesburg, were blocked. The riots caused an estimated 50 billion rand in damage, and over 40,000 businesses were affected by the unrest. More than 150,000 jobs were put at risk due to the destruction. The South African National Defence Force was deployed to assist the police. About 25,000 troops were eventually deployed, the largest domestic deployment since the end of apartheid. Thanks, Jacob Zuma. The riots exposed deep-seated social and economic inequalities in South Africa. There were shortages of food and fuel that occurred in many areas due to supply chain disruptions. Some communities formed local protection groups to defend against the looters. Social media played a significant role in both organizing and countering the unrest. The organizing was coming allegedly from Jacob Zuma's daughter herself. The government faced criticism for its slow initial response to the violence. President Cyril Ramaphosa called the unrest an attempted insurrection. What an idiot. The riots had a significant impact on South Africa's economy, already strained by the COVID-19 pandemic and the extended lockdowns of the foolish Ramaphosa government. Another man I hate. Several shopping malls were completely destroyed or severely damaged. Durban, South Africa's third largest city, was particularly hard hit. There were reports of ammunition and gun looting from stores and from police barracks. Some critics accused political factions within the ANC of instigating the violence. The riots highlighted issues of poverty, unemployment, and inequality in South Africa, which had become even worse under the lockdowns of Ramaphosa and under the previous government of Jacob Zuma. Over 2,500 people were arrested in connection with the unrest. The events led to debates about the need for basic income grants and other support measures. All dumb ideas, obviously. Recovery efforts began almost immediately, with communities coming together to clean up, which was interesting to see. Even good, you could say. The unrest had a negative impact on investor confidence in South Africa again. It led to calls for reforms in policing and intelligence services, which of course didn't happen at the time. The riots were the worst violence South Africa had experienced since the end of apartheid. They reignited debate about racial tensions and economic disparities in the country, because that's what we're always talking about. It wasn't any different. The long-term effects of the riots on South Africa's social fabric and economy are still being felt and assessed. This is why I hate Jacob Zuma. The man brings chaos wherever he goes. These riots didn't need to happen, but they were instigated. They were not just natural, that suddenly they sprang up. These were instigated, and there was some sort of momentum that caught on and they spread. But even the spread wasn't completely natural. It was caused by some people. The first batch of looters were actually sort of trained, hired instigators, the way I saw it. And I put Jacob Zuma and his evil little daughter right behind that. And he's still bringing chaos with his new party, the Mkhonto weSizwe. Which brings me to the fifth reason. The fifth reason I despise Jacob Zuma and don't even care that he got expelled is the MK party. The MK stands for Umkhonto weSizwe, which means Spear of the Nation in Zulu. MK was originally formed in 1961 as the armed wing of the African National Congress. It is now also the name of the political party established by Mr. Zuma. The party was founded by former President Jacob Zuma, of course. Zuma announced the formation of MK on December 16, 2023, which is also known as the Day of Reconciliation in South Africa. Ironic. The party's formation came after Zuma's fallout with the ANC. MK positions itself as a challenger to the ANC, and it showed that in the 2024 general elections by becoming the third biggest party in the country. The party uses the symbolism and legacy of the original Mkhonto weSizwe military organization. Its formation has been controversial, with debates over the use of the MK symbol. They even went to court about it. The ANC challenged the MK's right to use the name and logo associated with the former military wing. MK's ideology is described as broadly left-wing and populist. Very bad ideas, all of them. The party has criticized what it sees as the ANC's departure from its historical principles. That all amounts to Zuma saying, "Why did you kick me out? You shouldn't have kicked me out." MK has positioned itself as a champion of the poor and marginalized. It has called for more radical economic transformation in South Africa. The party has attracted some former ANC members who are dissatisfied with the current leadership. MK's formation has been seen as potentially fragmenting the ANC's traditional support base, which it obviously has. Look at the election results. The party faced legal challenges regarding its registration and use of the MK name. It has pledged to fight corruption, yeah right, despite criticism of Zuma's own controversial tenure as president. MK has called for changes in South Africa's economic policies to address inequality. Yes, that's very believable. The party's formation has reshaped the political landscape since the 2024 elections, though. It won the KwaZulu-Natal province in 2024 outright and was only kept out by a coalition between the ANC, the IFP and the DA. The MK has been accused by critics of being a vehicle for Zuma's personal political ambitions, which is obviously true. The party's performance in the 2024 elections was significant in that it brought the ANC down under 50%, making sure that it could not rule the country outright. Jacob Zuma's own ambition brought them down and brought in this party of bad ideas. It is a vehicle for Zuma's unbridled lust for power and for being vindictive, petty, and wanting revenge. He is a configuration of bad ideas and of bad principles and of bad sentiment. This man is worthless and is a stain on the South African political landscape. This 80-year-old man won't just go home, enjoy his elderly years on his overpriced, filthy little farm and leave us alone. But no, the snake keeps wanting to creep in because of his love and lust for power. Even though he's shown time and time again that he cannot be trusted with it, he is not good at it, and he is a negative impact on South Africans' lives and on South Africa. I hate Jacob Zuma. In conclusion, the man has a talent for playing the victim. That's why he has gotten this far and been able to convince people to vote for him. Apart from a couple of other reasons, the primary reason is that he plays a good victim and makes people believe that he is in some way being ostracized when he is in fact part instigator and the most selfish virus on South African politics to this day, in my opinion. I recommend he does the world a favor, and he does South Africa a favor, and he does South African politics a favor, and he does the South African population and economy a favor, and drops dead soon. A saying, "Awulethu mshini wam," take your machine gun and go back to Nkandla. Another saying, "Happiness is secured through virtue. It is a good attained by a man's own will." Thomas Aquinas. Jacob Zuma is not a happy man. He still walks around being a vindictive, cynical old fool, wanting to right the wrongs done to him and settle scores, while being an obvious stain on South Africa. He should go home and leave us alone. The case is closed, my friend. I hate Jacob Zuma and I don't care that he got expelled. No one does. Everyone's tired of this fool. In fact, it is quite clear that Mr. Jacob Geleshegisa Zuma is a net negative in South African politics, the South African economy, and South African life. He should do us all a favor and grab his machine gun and go home where he can live out his life, eat some ice cream, look at his cows, hopefully settle his matters with God, before he just drifts away and goes the way of all the world into the ground, never to be seen again. Remember not to forget that you can get access to a short course on our Buy Me a Coffee page. Just follow the links in the description, and if you become a member, you'll get the course and a digital comic book emailed to you every single month. If you can't buy us a coffee or get the membership, just join our mailing list. The link is in the description, and you can get one digital comic book emailed to you.